For this video we're going to continue our look at Power BI. On the screen at the moment you can see the current project with what we've learned so far. So we've got a gauge showing the current value, we've got a trend that we've built up with our own tooltips on this, and I've done one for light and one for vibration. This sensor data is coming from a Raspberry Pi 0W with a couple of sensors on there, some I2C sensors, and then we're using Node Red on there to push the data to Azure, and then I'm using Stream Analytics to push the data to Power BI once I've got the data in IoT Hub. So a bit of a long route, but we've covered all of that in previous videos. What I want to look at today is conditional formatting and alarms. This is why I like Power BI. I need very little programming knowledge to be able to perform this task. I can actually do it by using if-else statements that I would use in Excel. So let's have a look at my data. So what I'm going to focus on is the light, and I have this value here. I've set this gauge up. Remember, this is not real time, so I'm reading the data every 15 minutes. So I'm not trying to flood my application with too much data. So it will read this min, max and standard deviation and average value. So what I want to do is trigger an alarm off the maximum value that I see. So that will be almost the light shining in. So I should have quite a big light gap because I'll shine the light at the sensor for a couple of seconds and my average won't be affected too much, but I'll pick up on the max value. So I'm hoping that makes sense. So let's look at my data and have a look at how we can play around with this query. So the easiest way is here I have my light max value that I'm recording. So you can see here most of the time, the average is pretty low, and I can see here this must have been me opening the curtains or turning a light on in my office. So this is what we're going to look at as our trigger points, but then we need to add a new column and bring in some alarm text. So that's quite easily done. If you look here, we'll do it here first. We can do it within the query editor, but we'll do it on the main table. Add a new column, and then you'll get your expression builder at the top. I have one here that I've prepared earlier. So if I just delete that, Control V, I want my column now to be called light alarm, and then you can see here if my light max, hit this value, is greater than 60, I'm going to change that because it does go above 1,000, then I want the message to say wear sunglasses, otherwise display a message that says light level normal. So if I hit enter on that, it will populate that for my data that I've already got. Of course I haven't used my torch on the sensor yet, which is going to push that value up, so none of these are in alarm. What I want to do now is pull that value. I can either put it in a table or I can put it in just a text box. Let's have a look at how I put it into my report. So if you want like an alarm history, we can use a table. So let's just push this over and we should be able to do the conditional formatting on the table. So let's see if my memory serves me right. So I'm going to insert a table, and then on this table I want the time as one column, and I don't want it displayed like that. I just want it as date and time as all one value, and then my new column, which was light alarm. So if I pull this in, I can see here now I have my values on the trend, and they interact with each other. So if I click here, I can see when at this moment in time what was normal, and then what I should be able to do is the other way around, is click on the graph, and then I get the value for the alarm at that precise moment in time. What I want to do now is add the conditional formattings. If I go back to my table and then I can see here light alarm. If I right click this, I can select conditional formatting. You have background, font color. Icons I'm going to touch on another video, and web URL. So rather than having text, we can have images. Let's have a look at these two first, which is just formatting the text and the background. So let's have a look at the background color. So if we click on that, we have here our rules, values only. We don't need to change any of this, but we could use a different value within our data to trigger this conditional formatting, but we're just using the same. Now we're looking here at it to contain the text, so light, level, normal. And when it's light, level, normal, I want the background to go green. So I select my color, and now I want a rule for when it becomes a little bit bright. So if I click on new rule, contains, and I think I put wear sunglasses. And I want the background then to go red. Now you can see everything's green. That's set the conditional formatting up. I will save my project. What I want it to also do is, because the black text doesn't show up very well on the red, I'm going to put a rule in there for the text color. So right click and then conditional formatting, font color, select contains again, this to wear sunglasses, and I'll have the text as a nice bright yellow that hopefully is going to stick out. I'm just going to tidy up my chart a little bit. I don't want the total on here, so let's go back to my chart, edit my settings, totals, don't want them on, and then I want to just do my general tidying up that I normally do. I'll put a border on this, give it a radius. So it's up to you how much you want to edit this. I'm happy with that. Some other nice features when you're using the this table, you go to your visual, there's all sorts of different styles. You can develop it yourself, but there's some built-in default styles here. So I'm on default at the moment. You're going to have flashy rows and things like that, but we'll stick with default for now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this, and I'm going to turn on my stream analytics because it's turned off at the moment. That will pull data every 15 minutes from my sensor. I'm going to shine the torch at it a couple of times and see what happens to these alarms. You can see on the screen now my Node-RED project, and this is where my data originates from. So this is my edge device. You can see here this data transmission. So these are averaging the data here, min and max over a 15-minute period. So you can see my values here. I'm doing the same for vibration. And this is another payload that's gone. This second payload, I've opened the blind in my office, so the light max has gone up a little bit. So this data now has been transmitted to Azure. Because I'm using the desktop version of Power BI, I just need to manually refresh that. If I go home, you'll see the refresh button here. This is going to grab the data from Azure Blob Storage. So we can see under here now, I'm just going to filter this on my time. I can see that this period here, I had a high spike. You can see it here on my office lights, and that's when I shone my torch at the sensor. This could be classed as an anomaly, and this is why we monitor the average, min and max. You can see here my last average value, and you can also see it on the trend, only went up to 50, but I had quite a big spike on the max. So it's important that you do some clever manipulating of the data on the edge device, so you don't have to transmit as much data quite as often. and that allows you to use low bandwidth communication protocols such as LoRaWAN. Now we've added this alarm notification, we've got a nice filter that we can start to use. We don't want to have to start scrolling up and down to try and find our alarms, especially if it's something that doesn't happen very often. So it makes sense to have a filter on these values here. So let's add that. And remember, a filter is called a slicer. So we click off our option, add the slicer, and then we're going to use our light alarm value. We'll start off by tidying it up like we normally do. So go to your visual settings, general, effects, turn the border on. So without doing, just remembered one thing I need to do is on the general, turn off header icons. So dragging it in by default, you can see here I can use this filter. It allows me to select one, I can't select two, which is fine. But there are other options. Let's go and have a look at the settings, so the visual settings for this. So you can see here slicer settings. First one we have is options, so we can have tiles, or we can have drop down. The tiles work quite nicely when you've got an image, but we'll stick with vertical list. And then we have the header, which is this bit here. We can turn that on and off, but we'll leave it on for now. And the values, the text size, and whether you put a border around that, but again the defaults are okay. And then you've got this option for select here. If you select single select, then you can never turn the filter off, and you might want to see all of your data. So I don't use that one too often. Multi-select is one I tend to use, and I can't actually remember what show select all option. Let's have a look. There we go. Okay, so what that means is I can have all selected if I've got loads of different filters I want to use. I've only got two, so it makes no sense for us to have that. We will have just this option here because we can turn them off manually anyway. So this setting is ideal. We don't need the select all, so I can select one or other, and I can turn it off, so I've got no alarm filters on at all. So this would be the best one to use. If you've got quite a lot, then you could use show select all as an option. But there you have it. We've just added another filter that's quite useful for alarms. I hope you found the content in this video useful. Can you please share this with your friends and colleagues? But for now, thanks for listening, and hope to see you again soon.